what comes to your mind when you think about science? If by typing in the word science in an image database, we get the following pictures. We got robots, we got molecules, DNA, brain, humans, scientists. So we are aware of the outcomes of science. We also know that science, to conduct science, we need money, we need people, we need infrastructure, so all these things. But we often take for granted what's in between. What I meant by that is how science does science. So for many years, science has been kind of like treated as a black box. In this case, inputs come in, and scientific discoveries and outputs come out. But slowly, we're learning more about what is taking place inside this black box. Today, I will show you some of my efforts to look inside the science black box in order to understand how, like you scientists, are breaking down the boundaries between disciplines. Yeah? So, which is called convergence. As you know, science is growing so fast. Actually, like now, maybe you noticed, nowadays, it is even difficult to keep up with our own fields of research. In this case, this growth has led to the branching out of science into many disciplines, restricting researchers into smaller and smaller areas of science. Science is also becoming more expensive. As you know, a lot of money is being spent in science and technology, making funding organizations to know about the effectiveness of their investments. Yeah? As science becomes more complex and resource intensive, there is a need to understand how science, like how the science system works. But understanding comes from multiple ways. Direct observation has been one of the, in this case for the natural sciences, has been crucial for understanding natural phenomena. It is said like seeing is believing. Yeah? And this is also the case for the social sciences. So what I do. Basically, to see something, you need samples, you need equipment, and also you need probes. Yeah? Roughly speaking, this is what data scientists interested in science and technology, such as me, do. So we have samples, yeah? Universities, research centers, research labs. We also have equipment, yeah? Computing power, software, databases. Yeah? And we also have, for example, since we cannot see science and technology directly, we also need probes. And our probes are meta-knowledge and networks. Let me talk a little bit about it. Yeah? Meta-knowledge is defined as the knowledge about knowledge. That means what we try to do, we try to understand the science system by looking into the knowledge it generates. Let me use a case of publications. I mean, we all publish papers, and we have to publish. But behind a paper, there's a lot of information about science and technology. For example, think of the topics, keywords, references, and so on. And this is actually what meta-knowledge is all about. And basically, in my case, I'm more interested on the interconnections. So like how meta-knowledge is interconnected. Yeah? And we try to do so through the use of networks. And, but why networks? Yeah, you may be wondering. Yeah? And actually, a network is so simple. It's just a bunch of nodes connected by lines, yeah? If you think about it. But actually, the power of networks comes from scalability. So the more nodes you have, the more edges or like lines you have, the easier it is to, for example, perceive patterns in the data, and also from which we can define structures. And from these structures, we can understand the behavior of any system. Yeah? By this system could be social, could be a knowledge system, or a any type of system. Okay, so in the rest of the presentation, I will try to combine these three topics with the concept of convergence. And convergence is defined as the integration of two or more disciplines to solve challenging problems. In this case, by disciplines, it is meant engineering, physical sciences, computational sciences, mathematical, biomedical sciences. But the important point here is that convergence is about solving challenging problems. And also, like, convergence is about synergy. What you get is more than the sum of the parts. Eh? And actually, maybe I've seen that person, yeah, maybe here, yeah, like this combined person. Yeah. But anyway, like, this is also an important topic, yeah, like synergy in convergence. But then comes the question, yeah, like how to see convergence. Yeah? So like, how can we visualize it? And I will be showing you three methods to see convergence. And in analogy to a microscope, just think about these three methods in terms of magnifications, different magnifications in a microscope. At lower levels of, in this case, all of them is to see science convergence. Yeah? At lower levels of magnification, I will be showing you the connections between disciplines. Next, the connections between papers in a research center. And also, at higher levels of magnification, the connections between topics. That means like DNA, stem cells, protein, and so on. Okay. Let me begin with seeing convergence through disciplines. So this is a three-dimensional network connecting about 220 disciplines. The basis of these connections is the number of times they cite each other. And the colors that you see here represent, in this case, nodes or like disciplines, or like groups of highly connected disciplines. Yeah? In this case, we would expect, just as an example, fields of material sciences to be closer together, and also like far away from those of the social sciences, as both fields of research barely cite each other. Yeah? So, and that's how this type of network is constructed. Yeah? Then I will show you the structure we get. So we begin with the social sciences, for example, management, economics, social sciences. Then moving into psychological sciences. This is the beginning of natural sciences with biomedicine, chemistry, what else? Material sciences, geosciences. Then physics, engineering, computer science, and mathematical methods. Yeah. 2 points here. Yeah. The first one, convergence is about connecting disciplines. Yeah. So the more disciplines you have, and also like the farther, that's the important point, the farther they are, the higher the convergence. Yeah. And the second one, maybe some of you are aware of this relationship between structure and function. Yeah. So typically, for the case of science, we think of science as let's say we have macro disciplines from which sub-disciplines come down, then sub-disciplines come down. But in reality, what you can see here is that the structure of science is quite complex. Different disciplines connecting with other disciplines, and what you get is a structure. And based on this structure, you can have an idea of the function of the components, yeah? Or the function of the whole structure. Yeah? And also, this type of approach can be used to analyze convergence in research centers. So let's have a look at convergence in our institute, yeah? The WPI iCeMS. So from this full network, we can go and focus on those specific disciplines in which iCeMS is active. Yeah? And this is the picture that we get. And at the end, we were able to realize that, okay, so we see connections between, for example, the fields of chemistry, physics, and engineering on the left, with more biological disciplines on the right. And somehow it tells us that the mission of the institute is somehow is fulfilled, yeah? In this case for the WPI iCeMS, as both the physical sciences and the biological sciences are connected. Yeah? So what I wanted to show you here is that it is possible to know which disciplines are being interconnected with which other disciplines in one research center. Yeah? But if you think about it, like knowing that molecular biology is connected with biomaterials engineering is not enough. It is useful, of course, yeah? But it's not enough. So we have to go to a little bit deeper into, to really understand convergence, we have to go into the level of topics. Yeah? And to do so, sorry, I will be talking about topics before going to papers, yeah? So just don't. So to do so, we can extract topics from publications or documents and then connect them in terms of the, or on the basis of the number of times they appear together in text. So each of those nodes represent topics. The colors represent groups of highly connected topics. Yeah? So in a sense, those colors represent the main research areas of a research center. Yeah? In this case, the WPI iCeMS. And as you can see, a structure is building. You see a specific research activities taking specific places within this three-dimensional structure. Yeah? And I like to have this vision, yeah, of like how science somehow takes certain positions according to the connections between the components. Yeah? But if you think about it, convergence depends on the research activities. Yeah? For example, like drug delivery systems. If we compare drug delivery systems with synthesis, yeah, drug delivery systems will tend to be more convergent than, let's say, the synthesis of materials. Yeah? Why? Because that's the way it is. But the important point here is that by connecting both fields of science, we can get a higher levels of convergence. Yeah? Or we can, in this case, that means we can solve more complex problems, like research problems. And also, we can display, like the previous map, into two dimensions, yeah, in which we have, like the X and Y represents the distances between the topics, and the Z-axis represents the number of publications each topic has. And if you think about it, this somehow looks as a landscape, yeah, in which elevated areas represent points of high intensity. Yeah? And this is what we get for the WPI iCeMS as an example. Yeah? So we have, just roughly speaking, so we have a little bit more like physical sciences on the left, more biological sciences on the right, and in between, somehow like bridging topics such as nanostructures, photoactivation, photothermal effects. So like those topics are kind of like bridging those two areas. Yeah? But let me just give you some implications from this type of map. Yeah? The first one is that through this approach, we can somehow know about the position of a scientist's research within the whole research center. Yeah? So once we know this, we can also tell the choices we have for convergence. So for example, how to connect points or like topics A, B, and C. Yeah? Or the more challenging one, D, F, or like D, E, and F. Yeah? So, and also, if we think about it, okay, once we have this, then can we do it inside the research institute or through the collaboration with other research centers? Yeah? So what I wanted to give you here is that convergence is about connecting the hills and valleys of research, yeah, based on this visualization. And the more hills and valleys we have, the higher the convergence that we will get. Okay, so now finally, let me talk about convergence for the case of papers. And what I will be showing you here is a simulation of the interconnections of papers for the WPI iCeMS from 2007 to 2014. So it's like 1,100 papers. Yeah? And it's quite small, but and it's changing, yeah, like from 2007 to 2014, yeah. So like 2 points here. I talk about, maybe if you remember, I talk about structures, yeah. But if you think about it, the structure is not maybe the most appropriate term, as science is in continuous motion. Yeah? So science is dynamic. Yeah? And what I wanted to show you here through this network is that so it's changing, and also the network is continuously like reaccommodating, if you could see. It's continuously reaccommodating and adapting according to the new conditions of the research center. Yeah? And also another important topic is the role of scientists. So the dynamics are driven by the research of scientists. Yeah? And it's not only, and the impact of this research is not only on our own CV or the group of publications of the lab, yeah? But it impacts the full network, or like the full structure of the research center. Yeah? And as it changes, the network also changes, and so on. Yeah? Okay, but so what? Like maybe you may be thinking, yeah, like why is it important? Yeah? I've been talking here for maybe 10, 13 minutes about how to see science convergence. Yeah? But why is it important? Actually, it is known that research is heading into a more convergent degree. It doesn't mean that convergence will replace science. Yeah? It's not about it. Yeah? The important point is that research is getting more convergent. And you can see here that, and just to give you some examples yeah, from the US, from the life sciences in the US, and they're quite recent. Yeah? You know, many of you know the BRAIN Initiative. These two ones is for this year, yeah? The Precision Medicine Initiative and the Cancer Moonshot 2020. Yeah? So somehow, convergent is becoming more important, more and more important. Yeah? So to have ways to see convergence could be a good way to understand what is happening. Yeah? Another one is that knowledge is increasing at an accelerated rate. Yeah? So like now it is impossible for a human to be able to digest the flood of information that is being generated over time. But fortunately, we have many different technologies, computational and also like information technologies, which we can harness, for example, in the case of machine learning, deep knowledge technologies, artificial intelligence, visualization technologies, and so on. And such technologies can be harnessed to maybe come up with some sort of an intelligent research support system for science, yeah? Which is one of my interests. Yeah? Okay, I told you that seeing is believing, yeah? But actually seeing is understanding. Yeah? And I believe that the approaches that I talked to you today can help us to uncover this black box. Yeah? And as we uncover this black box, I think that such approaches can contribute to the conduction of the next generation of research. And thank you for your attention. Yeah, this is all.